Hey there, it's Karen, and I'm here with Whiskey Sour, who, for you guys that are just tuning in, is my stuffed animal who is filling the void right now while I have no animals in my life. It's something I think about every single day. I had animals all over the farm. I had my last Jack Russell lived to be 16, had her for a really long time. And then my stray cat Filthy I had in this apartment building up until June of last year, and then he passed away. But since then, I've had no animals, and there was a big gap of time between my Jack Russell and Filthy coming that I had no animals. So if another little stray cat wants to venture into my building, that's good. But I'm going to wait right now because I do want to move, and I'm not sure exactly where I'm moving to or when, and so I'm going to wait and kind of do it properly when I can really have the space and I'm allowed to have it and everything, and then that will happen. I'm feeling a little bit of the whole animal frustration thing right now because the apartment building complex that's right beside me, which is a really big building, so I had a tough time figuring out where it was coming from, but there's been a dog that's been screaming in there just day in and day out, and I've filed complaints. I've talked to, had some correspondence with people from the Los Angeles Animal Services and just, all the things that you're supposed to do. And it's really frustrating right now, just having to listen to that, first of all. And second of all, just knowing that some dog is just not as comfortable as what it could be. Now, whether it's separation anxiety or what the problem is, I don't know. But it's just frustrating to listen to, knowing that those people are clearly not giving that animal a good home. Because it's just going on and on and on and on and on. So that's frustrating too. So there's a lot of reasons I want to leave here. I'm not a city girl. I'm really not. The city's been good for me in a lot of ways. Los Angeles has been good for me in a lot of ways with the weather and everything, but I'm longing for the Four Seasons. I'm longing for, just to have that serenity, just physical serenity again. But it's been a good challenge for me to just learn to deal with things in the neighborhood and in the city that I normally wouldn't be tolerant of, and so that's been really good. But like I said before, now I have tolerance. We'll travel. I would like to share a blog with you called "Can You Pick Up Where You Left Off?" And this came from someone who told me about being bullied, and he asked me to address the topic of bottled up feelings and if I had experiences like it. From the ages of 12 to 18 was really especially bad for him, and from the ages 10 to 17 was really rough for me. So I want to read one of his paragraphs, and then I'll just read you my response to him. Again, I want you guys to understand that I don't have any professional degree dealing with these things. What I do have is life experience, and I really only talk about things that I've have some experience in, and even then I always try to preface it by saying this is just my experience. For anybody else out there, you have your own unique experience, and I would always love to hear your thoughts in comment form after the blogs. Because I think that there's a lot of unique perspectives out there that you just never know who's reading it and who it's helped. And I've witnessed that over the last 5 years, where things that you guys have said in the responses has actually triggered somebody to get better or to deal with some of the things that they're going through. So I really encourage you guys to keep doing that, so thank you. So I will read his paragraph and then go on to read my thoughts. He says, "For many years, I didn't let out certain emotions, anger and sadness mainly, or my feelings of fear. Anger, I would dispel it by crying instead." A lot of boys go that route. Not a good thing to do when you're 12. That was caused by two boys from school that I was with. We were on the platform of a railway station waiting for a train home from school. Suddenly, they grabbed me by my arms and legs and started swinging me, making out as they were going to throw me onto the railway lines. The fear came from them that they may actually do it, I started to panic and struggle, so they put me down and moved away from me, and then the anger started to surge through me as I got up. I started to go towards to confront or hit them, but I would start crying and shouting at them instead. That was when the bullying and ridicule started. It didn't take long for word to spread around the school what had occurred, coupled with the fact that I did Bible readings in assembly and church services, and I sang in school choir. I was then labeled as a crybaby or a sissy, a big girl, and I was constantly tormented. I was also learning to play the flute at that time and used to go into the music room to practice during break times. The two main culprits, who shall remain nameless, also played instruments and would follow me in there on occasions, and they would do things to me like trapping my head in one of the metal music stands. Just awful. That was why I gave up playing the flute, singing, and my Bible readings, all the things that I enjoyed doing. The saddest part of being bullied is that it inhibits a person from doing something they love. And part of having that artistic freedom is when we get to explore who we are. I was also bullied on the playground and started at a deficit, which continued for most of my life. I remember playing piano in school. It was like grade 7 or 8. When I say grade 7 or 8, that's different from American. In Canada, we say grade 7 or 8. You say 7th grade here. So just so you don't think I'm completely. Some of the people were impressed that I could play, and then other people were just really threatened with this new information, and then I was picked on as well. I was a very colorful child. You can't imagine that, right? At home and on my own, I felt very free, but when I was at school, I was a very awkward child who was stuck somewhere between my spirit of play and fear, which is a really gray, kind of weird area to be in. I would move back and forth between the two depending who was around. This bled into my adult life as well. Certain family members inhibit me, some don't. Some acquaintances make me feel awkward, some make me feel comfortable. But bottling up our anger is one thing, but bottling up our talent is worse. And that's kind of the point of my blog today, is can you pick up where you left off? Where were you at that point when you were being bullied? Can you pick up from that point now? It doesn't matter how old you are. So that's kind of the whole point I'm getting at here. Not only does bottling up feelings keep you good and angry, but it means the things you are good at never become realized. I believe in letting feelings out, being truthful, having a voice. But my ultimate change came by looking at situations a little differently. Letting out my anger and frustration happens in poetry, music, and art. For the most part, I don't find it extraordinarily helpful. It's part of the necessity of healing and all that stuff. But it's not completely, even though I've let all my feelings out, sometimes you're just sitting there going, okay, now what? I've let all my feelings out. But you're not sure if you can pick up where you left off. Opening up to someone who loves you generally works better than lashing out at enemies, but I needed to realize two things. One, people who bully us, hurt us, or do bad things generally are either threatened, or like by us, or they have had something bad happen to them and somebody do it to them. If you look at the numbers, most kids experience it. It's sad, ugly, and yet very normal. It's wrong, but we shouldn't feel like it only happened to us. It's like a bad domino effect, the sins of the fathers, like just the things that have happened to them, unfortunately, go on to the next person. Some of us do not pass those things on, and some of us can't help but pass those things on. So it's really important to realize that the bullies also have some of their own issues. And the second thing I needed to realize was that age does not stop me from being a child. To say that they stole my childhood is perhaps factual, but we tend to give up our ambitions because we think it's too late, or our pain is just so high from it, we're too exhausted to talk about it, far less pick up where we left off. You will find your group who accepts you, but I still feel like we have to do things because we love to do them and we enjoy them. And we have to do that without anyone watching us. If we wait for someone to give us permission to pick up an instrument, we're going to be waiting for a really long time. Bullying will imprint this negativity on our spirit, and it actually causes you to care what others think of you because they're right in your face and threatening you, so of course it's human instinct to protect oneself. But there's so many groups out there now who do what you do. If you're 75 years old and you want to play the guitar, I bet you can find a group online who is actually 75 and playing guitar. Like, it's just, there's so many people out there now. If you're 15 years old and you want to play the flute, there's a really good chance there are other teen flute players out there. If you watch enough orchestras, there's somebody in that orchestra who's young and playing the flute. There's just always somebody out there who's enough like you that you can be part of that group. And it's an awesome thing about in the age of Google and being on the internet is we can find these groups, these like-minded spirits. We can find them. When children trap your head in a music stand, like what happened to this guy, awful, right? Can you imagine just like how awful it is? All you're doing is just trying to do something you love to do, and somebody does that to you, and you weren't looking for attention necessarily. You were just doing what you wanted to do. You run the risk of equating the music with those bullies, the two things that just do not go together. And negative association has been one of my greatest hurdles. I've always had a hard time with, here's an example, and it's a long story that I'll go into sometime, but when I was abused as a young teenager by my mother's boyfriend, one of the things that he made us do, and it was really strange, and I always thought I'd write a whole book just based on it, so I'll just touch briefly on it, is he made us grow rows and rows and rows of onions in the garden. And then he would make us put them in jars and pickle them, and you know, all these really bizarre things. And there's a whole bunch that's just touching the surface of the bizarre things, but I've always had a negative association with relish ever since. Or those kind of baby onions, you know, things like that. Onions in general sometimes will freak me out a little bit. And so it's not even so much that I hate the taste of these things, but I have this association. And, you know, this is a couple decades later, and I'm still having these associations of what happened then. So I'm sure many of you have your own negative associations that some might be even worse than that. And then there's ones like where if your ex had a certain color of cat or a certain breed of dog, you might hate them now, and it's not even like the animal's fault. You just do not want that association. So it's that negative association that we have. And for our friend here that wrote me this email, a music stand is supposed to hold the music for us to see. You know, we might even create and put our own music on that music stand, and it's supposed to be this awesome thing that sits a couple feet away from us that prompts music. And my hope is that there's not a negative association there with, or even just seeing a flute. You know, little things like that along the way, that it's not the flute's fault and it's not the music's fault. It's somebody made you feel that way. And if we can somehow get rid of the negative association, and of course go through all those getting our anger and feelings out and stuff too, but maybe we can pick up where we left off. So I signed off today, backed against the fence but climbing over. And for me, if you guys have seen the front of the Playground Isolator CD, you will see me behind a fence. That is to signify a depression and a lot of things I was going through, and a bad relationship, and all these horrible things that had happened on that CD. But it all stems back to being bullied by a bunch of girls in public school who pushed me against a fence. And it all stems back to that. And so my idea is that somehow I could take this fence and make it my art. And that whole Playground Isolator CD was the chapter where I could get that all out. So it's that chapter in my life that I was able to get it all out. So that's how I signed off today. And I want to give you a quote by E.B. White. "The world is full of people who have never, since childhood, met an open doorway with an open mind." Children have the power to do this. They see an open door and they just run through it like the kids in Narnia, you know. And something happened to us along the way that we see the open door and we have the negative association that goes with it. So I thought that was a good quote from E.B. White to finish off my blog today. So hopefully you guys can figure out where in your life you were doing something you loved, chop out the middle crap that's happened, and pick up where you left off. There is a series of things we have to do to get to that point, but hopefully that we can all finally get there, alright? So I will leave that with you today, and of course I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Alright, until next time, rock on. Right, Whiskey? Rock on.